2 months now left for the budget presentation. What is corporate India banking on? That is the crucial question to ask right now. To shed light on this, Sunil Kanoria, President at ASSOCHAM, is joining us right now on the show. Great to have you with us, Mr. Kanoria. Now, these are difficult times that we are living in. Demonetisation has played out its impact for the real here and now. But how lasting is this impact going to be? That is the question that many are floundering with. Right. As far as corporate India is concerned, well, a lot of people we've been speaking to talk about the difficulties in the next 2 quarters. But beyond that, what are the reassurances that corporate India is looking for from the government in the budget?
Well, I think what is important now for this government to do post this demonetization, which has already happened, it has had a negative impact in the GDP and the economic activity in the country for the next few quarters. And we will see a challenge for some time, which I don't think we'll be able to regain going forward. But however, if we have to come out of this challenging situation and start to grow again, I think there has to be follow-on reforms post this demonetization. And I think what the budget should look at is to reducing the tax rates substantially. We believe that on the individual tax rates, the minimum slab should go up from 2.5 lakhs to at least 5 lakhs. And the tax rates, the maximum tax rates to be brought down to 25%. We believe that for individuals up to 25 lakhs should have only 10% tax rates. And then above that it can be at 20 and then 25. For corporate tax rates, again, we believe that it should be dramatically brought down to between 20 and 25%, move away all the surcharges, which will help. Both these two effects will help in having the private sector and the individuals to increase their consumption and increase investments, which will again improve the cycle, because we can't expect the government to basically able to use this kind of resources for the implementation, because that's a slow process. And therefore, if you release cash in the hands of individuals and corporates, it will go back in the investment cycle and the consumption cycle. So I think that is one of the core areas. We also believe that the GST rates now, with this process, you have brought in a huge amount of transaction within the system. Therefore, the GST rates ideally now should not be more than 15%, and we should not even look at those 18%, because the size and the volume of taxes which will be collected now post this transaction will be very high, and that will again help improve the economy much faster and bring it. Therefore, I think this budget is a very crucial, whereby the government has to take now bold steps in releasing, not being kind of a miser to release tax rates in small quantities, but to give a big bang.
Right. Mr. Kanoria, as you mentioned, yes, rationalization of corporate as well as individual tax rates will be a key positive, because the generation in terms of where black money is concerned, as you mentioned, will get lower. However, as we know, you will be meeting the Finance Minister tomorrow as well. What are the other key recommendations and proposals that you would be taking into consideration?
Apart from the taxes, I believe the government will have to augment the spending in the infrastructure very fast. The implementation has to be very fast, so that all the sectors of infra for the last 2.5 years, we have been talking, last 6 months, we saw investment cycle improve in the road sector. But I think in all across the infra space, the government would need to, because they would have enough resources with the fiscal deficit and all coming down and the resources being available in the government hands. I think that should be used to augment the expenditure in the infra much faster. That would be one of the key areas. In social infrastructure, again, social expenditure the government needs to bring in, so that at the agriculture level, at the rural India, again the development goes, the growth happens in those areas, whereby again the cycle which has got derailed due to this demonetization starts to again pick up much faster. And these, I think, would be the key challenges in front of this government and we hope that they will be able to take some bold steps again.
Kanoria, the government and the opposition, as we heard from Dr. Manmohan Singh and then from the Finance Minister in Parliament, they stand on opposite ends of the spectrum on the play out of the demonetisation, the impact it's going to have on growth going ahead, on GDP. Like Dr. Manmohan Singh was saying, there will be at least a 2% kind of hit. Is there a consensus view at ASSOCHAM? What does corporate India make of the impact on growth? How long lasting can it be? And what can the government do to kind of curtail the impact of demonetisation on growth?
Well, I agree with you that the growth will definitely get impacted. In the next couple of months, the growth will be half of what we saw in the first half of this year. So therefore, the overall impact in this year could be anywhere from 1.5% to 2%, because very clearly the feedback which we are getting from all our members all across the country is that the economic activity has come down to the level from 25 to 40%. And therefore, that is a very clear indication that people have stopped spending, people have stopped virtually, they don't have the cash to spend, so they're basically conserving the cash. Economic activity has come to a halt. Therefore, the impact of all this would be definitely taking quite some time before it gets again onto tracks. And I think that's where, as I said earlier, that the government would need to give a huge push in February to again bring in the positive environment in the country.
Right. Staying with what we are witnessing right now in terms of a demonetization is concerned, this is a bold step that the government has taken. Now, obviously, this needs to be backed by a lot of support measures that the government needs to take. For example, we have GST, which does become of prime importance. Now, with the association that we have in terms of where rates are concerned, you know, there are expectations from ASSOCHAM also, which we've read, that no cess should be levied. And what you're saying is that a fair GST rate now should be close to 15%. Do you think a window should be now given to the industry to prepare themselves initially in terms of where GST is concerned?
Well, the window is required, no doubt about it. It needs a couple of months for the industry and enterprises to rejig itself and their systems to be able to cope it. And therefore, they must take a call within this parliament session and come out with the final views of what the act would be so that the implementation happens in April. Otherwise, we may have to push it, which will not be good for the country.
From what I'm hearing from you, Mr. Kanoria, there is a lot of onus on the government right now to kind of push the investment cycle. What about corporate India? Because now we are seeing a situation where there is liquidity in the bank. Some of that money in corporate lending will provide impetus to go ahead with the investment cycle. Do you see that scenario picking up anytime soon?
Well, but you see, investments happen when there is a demand, and therefore you have to fuel demand. How do you fuel demand? Fuel demand by either government expenditure through infrastructure or fuel demand through private demand, whereby consumers and consumption-led growth happens. So in order to do these two, it has to be the government who has to release money in the hands of the people through lowering of the taxes and use the surplus for expenditure. It is only then the investment cycle will come in. How do you expect the investment cycle to come in again, if you do not have these two things? It's a vicious cycle. Money will be lying in the banks. So interest rates may be lower, but the demand would not be there. We would get into a kind of a almost close to a deflationary situation, because things will come down dramatically.
Right.
You know, so therefore it is very important that this impact of this is covered up with the follow-on reforms. Also, we need to keep in mind and really examine that, is this going to reduce corruption? My view, the corruption comes from basically a couple of areas. One is political funding. Second is at the transaction level, primarily in the tax levels, or when an individual or people are interacting, the citizens are interacting with the government. In these areas, primarily, we need to bring out strong reforms, simplification of processes, simplification of taxes, whereby the source and generation of the black money reduces. And it is very important to address those, or else we'll find a situation where extortions increase in the environment, because people will be put at the corner, at the mercy, and extortions increase because people will still want to have their sources of money.
Right. Mr. Kanoria, one last thing that I would want your view on is in terms of what's the kind of demand that you have been picking up in terms of where NBFCs are concerned? Because on the back of demonetization, we are seeing some impact that has come into the real estate sector. Apart from that, a counter effect that we are seeing in terms of where NBFCs are concerned, as well as where housing finance companies go. What's the kind of demand that you are picking up from the industry side if you talk about where the NBFC section is concerned? Because as you mentioned, even if interest rates go down, we will see funds lying into the accounts and not get, diverted into consumers' hands because of lack of demand and lack of spending by the government on the infra end. Any concerns that you have been picking up there?
Well, you see, if you look at the infrastructure financial companies like ours, which is Shrey, there we are not seeing much of an impact, because here we are financing into the infrastructure sector, whereby the growth is dependent upon the government expenditure which is happening, and that for the last 6 months in the road sector and some of the areas like irrigation and all had improved. So we have been seeing a good growth in the last. This, of course, people are now more busy in sorting out their issues, so therefore in the last 10-15 days there will be some impact, but because the government expenditure in infra would continue, and that is the expectation, and that doesn't get impacted because of this demonetization, we do not expect much of an impact in our business area. But if you look at the overall NBFC sector, there have been a massive impact in the retail, in the MFI, in the retail sector, and these are areas which are directly consumer-led, and there has been a massive impact, and I think it will take quite some time for it to recover. We have also requested that just like banks, the non-banks which are registered and licensed by the Reserve Bank of India, they must be allowed to accept the old notes for their recoveries, or else the recovery cycle will be a challenge for these companies who are engaged in the rural financing or engaged in the retail financing, and that again can cause a lot of unrepairable damage.
For the moment though, Mr. Kanoria, they have kind of extended the window by which NPAs, the pronouncements of non-paying entities, that has been enlarged. So that perhaps might help, at least for the time being. We were talking about that. But Mr. Kanoria, we want to thank you for joining us with your time and perspective on this all-important issue as we head towards the budget. A lot is expected of the government. How much they deliver is something we'll be watching very closely. For the moment, a quick break. After that, a lot more coming up. Do stay with us.